I'll never forget my third week working at a Shell station off Route 9 in New Jersey. This was back in July 2022, right after I dropped out of community college. I was 19, living with my parents, and desperate for any job that would take me. The Shell was hiring for overnight shifts, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and they were paying $15 an hour. My manager, this guy named Derek, who was maybe 30, told me during the interview that nobody wanted nights because it got kind of dead after 2 a.m. I didn't care. I needed the money, and I figured I'd just watch Netflix on my phone when it got slow. The first 2 weeks were actually pretty chill. I'd get maybe 5 customers between 2 and 6 a.m., mostly truckers getting coffee or people coming back from bars. I'd spend most of my shift watching The Office on my phone and eating the free hot dogs from the roller grill. Derek had told me I was allowed to eat anything that was going to expire anyway. Then this regular started coming in. I first noticed him on a Tuesday night around 2:30 a.m. He was probably in his mid-40s, average height, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. He came in and bought a pack of Marlboro Reds and a Monster Energy drink. Normal enough, right? But when I handed him his change, he just stared at me for like 3 seconds too long before saying, "See you tomorrow." I thought that was a little weird, but I figured he was just being friendly since he was apparently a regular. Sure enough, he came back the next night. Same time, 2:30 a.m., almost exactly. Same order, Marlboros and Monster. This time when I gave him his change, and he asked, "You work every night?" I told him I worked Sunday through Thursday. He smiled and said, "Good to know," before leaving. That should have been my first red flag, but I just thought he was making conversation. He kept coming in every single night I worked, always between 2:30 and 2:45 a.m. On the 4th night, he started asking personal questions. Where was I from? Did I go to school? Did I have a girlfriend? I answered because, honestly, I was bored, and he was the only person I'd talked to in hours. I told him I'd dropped out of Middlesex County College, and no, I was single. He seemed really interested in that last part. "A good-looking guy like you? I'm surprised," he said. It made me uncomfortable, but I convinced myself he was just being nice. Plus, he was a paying customer, and Derek had told me to be friendly to the regulars. The next week, things started getting weirder. He began staying longer, like 15 to 20 minutes, just standing by the coffee machine or pretending to look at snacks while asking me questions. He wanted to know what time I got off work, where I lived, if I lived alone. A huge red flag went off in my head, but I'd already told him so much. I started giving vague answers like, "I live with family," and "my schedule changes." On Thursday night, this would have been my 3rd week, he came in at 2:33 a.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been checking the clock, kind of dreading when he'd show up. He bought his usual stuff, but then he pulled out his phone and asked if he could add me on Instagram. I panicked and lied, saying I didn't have social media. He looked at me like he didn't believe me, then said, "That's okay. I know where to find you anyway." He laughed like it was a joke, but something about the way he said it made my stomach drop. That should have been when I called Derek or told someone, but I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting. What was I going to say? A customer was friendly to me, and it made me uncomfortable. I felt stupid even thinking about reporting it. The next night, Friday, I was seriously considering calling in sick, but I needed the money, and I told myself I was being paranoid. He was probably harmless, just socially awkward or something. He didn't come in at his usual time. 2:30 passed, then 2:45, then 3 a.m. I actually felt relieved. Maybe he'd gotten the hint that I wasn't interested in being friends or whatever he wanted. Around 3:30 a.m., a white pickup truck pulled up to the far end of the parking lot, away from the gas pumps. It just sat there with the engine running. I could see someone in the driver's seat, but I couldn't make out who it was because of the distance and the glare from their headlights. I watched it for maybe 5 minutes. The truck didn't move. Nobody got out. My heart started racing. Every instinct was telling me something was wrong, but I convinced myself It was just someone on their phone or taking a nap. It happened sometimes. People would pull into the lot to make calls or rest. Then I noticed the driver was holding something up to the windshield. It took me a second to realize it was a phone, and it was pointed directly at the store. At me. They were filming me or taking pictures. I immediately ducked behind the counter and called Derek. It went straight to voicemail. Next, I tried texting, "Someone's in the parking lot just watching the store. I'm really freaked out." He didn't respond. It was 3:40 a.m. on a Saturday morning. He was obviously asleep. I called 911. The dispatcher asked if I was in immediate danger. I said I didn't know. Someone was just sitting in the parking lot filming the store. She said she'd send an officer to check it out, but it might be 20 to 30 minutes since it wasn't an active emergency. I felt so stupid, but I stayed on the line with her. While I was talking to the dispatcher, I watched the truck. It still hadn't moved. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You look scared." My blood ran cold. I told the dispatcher about the text. She asked if I could lock myself in a back room. I said there was a storage room, but it didn't lock from the inside. She told me to go there anyway and pull something in front of the door. I ran to the storage room, dragged a stack of beer cases in front of the door and waited. I could hear my phone buzzing with more texts, but I was too terrified to look. I just sat there in the dark, listening to my own breathing, waiting for either the police or for someone to try to get in. After what felt like hours, but was probably 15 minutes, I heard a car pull up, then voices, then a knock on the front door and someone yelling, "Police!" I came out of the storage room and saw 2 officers through the front windows. I unlocked the door and basically fell apart, shaking and on the verge of crying. They asked what happened. I showed them the texts. There were 3 more after the first one. "Why are you hiding?" "I just wanted to talk." "You're being rude." The officers went to check the parking lot, but the truck was gone. One of the officers asked if I knew who might have sent them. I told them about the regular who'd been coming in. I described him as best I could. Gray hoodie, 40s, average height. They took a report and said they'd increase patrols in the area, but without a license plate or a name, there wasn't much they could do immediately. I called Derek back and told him I was closing the store early and going home. When he finally called me back at 6 a.m., he actually tried to guilt trip me about leaving early until I explained what happened. Then he got quiet and said he'd cover my next shift while I took some time. I checked the security cameras the next day. The footage showed the guy's truck arriving at 3:28 a.m. and leaving at 3:52 a.m., right after I called the police. But the cameras didn't capture the license plate. They were angled wrong. I quit 2 days later. I didn't even give 2 weeks' notice. Derek understood and said he'd handled it poorly, that I should have called the police the first time I felt uncomfortable. He was right. The worst part? I still see that white pickup truck sometimes around town. I don't know if it's actually the same one. There are probably dozens of white trucks in the area, but every time I see one, my heart starts pounding, and I have to remind myself to breathe. I work at a Target now, daytime shifts only. I'll never work overnight again. This happened to me in November 2021 when I was 22, driving home from visiting my girlfriend in Pennsylvania. I lived in Maryland at the time, and the drive was about 3.5 hours, most of it through pretty rural areas. Once you got off I-95, I'd left her place around 10 p.m., way later than I'd planned. We'd gotten into this huge fight about me not visiting enough, and by the time we'd made up, and I actually left, it was already dark. My gas tank was at about a quarter, which I knew would get me home, but I decided to fill up anyway since I'd be driving through the middle of nowhere. Around 11:15 p.m., I took an exit for gas. My phone's GPS showed a BP station half a mile off the highway. The exit ramp was completely dark. No streetlights, no other buildings, just trees on both sides. I almost turned around, but I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just a gas station. I'd fill up and be back on the highway in 5 minutes. When I pulled into the station, something immediately felt wrong. All the lights were on inside the store, and the gas pumps were lit up, but I didn't see any cars. Not even an employee's car. The open sign was on, but as I got closer, I could see that the inside looked empty. Like, completely empty. No person behind the counter. No one in the aisles. I sat in my car for a minute, debating whether to just leave, but my gas light had just come on, and the next exit wasn't for another 18 miles according to my GPS. I convinced myself that maybe the attendant was in the bathroom or out back on a smoke break. That happened, right? I got out and went to swipe my card at the pump. It didn't work. I tried 3 times, nothing. The screen just said, "Please see cashier." I looked toward the store again. Still no sign of anyone inside. That should have been my cue to leave. Just drive to the next station and risk running on fumes. But I'd already gotten out of my car. Already wasted 5 minutes. I walked toward the store, telling myself I'd just peek inside, and if nobody was there, I'd go. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open and heard the bell chime. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. The fluorescent lights were humming. The coolers were running. A radio was playing some country station quietly. But no person. I walked up to the counter and knocked on it. "Hey, anybody here? I need to get gas." Nothing. There was a half-eaten sandwich on the counter next to the register, and a Coke that was still sweating condensation, like someone had been there very recently. Behind the counter, I noticed the security monitor. It showed 4 camera feeds, 2 outside covering the pumps, 1 pointed at the door I just walked through, and 1 showing the back room. I leaned over to look closer at the back room feed. That's when I saw movement. Someone was in the back room, standing completely still, facing away from the camera. They were wearing what looked like the BP uniform polo shirt. I felt a wave of relief. Okay, the attendant was just in the back, doing inventory or something. "Hey," I called out louder. "I need to get gas." On the monitor, I watched the person in the back room. They didn't turn around. They didn't move at all. It was like they hadn't heard me, even though I'd literally just yelled. I stared at the screen, waiting for them to react. After about 10 seconds, their heads slowly tilted to the side, like they were listening, but they still didn't turn around. Every hair on my body stood up. Something was very, very wrong. I backed away from the counter, my eyes still on that monitor. As I moved toward the door, I saw the person on the screen slowly turn around to face the camera, but I couldn't make out their face. The camera quality was too grainy, and they were wearing a hood pulled low. Then I heard it, a door opening from somewhere in the back of the store. I ran. I didn't wait to see who it was. I didn't call out again. I just ran straight out the front door, sprinted to my car, jumped in, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before I could get them in the ignition. As I threw the car in reverse, I looked at the store. Standing in the doorway was a tall figure in a BP polo shirt and a hood. They weren't running after me. They were just standing there, watching. I couldn't see their face at all, just the dark space where it should be under that hood. I reversed out so fast I almost hit one of the pumps, then floored it out of the parking lot. I was doing 60 miles per hour on the dark road back to the highway, checking my rearview mirror every 2 seconds to make sure nobody was following me. I made it to the next exit on fumes, literally. My car started sputtering as I pulled into a well-lit Exxon with like 6 other customers. I sat there for 20 minutes, just trying to calm down enough to pump my gas. The next day, I tried to find that BP station on Google Maps to report it or something. I couldn't find it. I searched every exit in that area. Nothing. I even drove back the next weekend during the day to see if I could find it again. But I swear the exit I took wasn't there anymore. Or maybe I remembered it wrong. I don't know. I told my girlfriend about it, and she thought I'd imagined it or dreamed it because I was tired. But I know what I saw. I know that person was in that back room, and I know they came out when I was there. I take I-95 the whole way now, even though it adds 30 minutes to my drive. I don't care. I'm never taking a dark exit for gas again, no matter how low my tank gets. And I definitely never go into a gas station when I don't see other people there. If it looks empty, I keep driving. I was 20 when this happened. Spring break of my junior year at Ohio State. This was March 2023. Me and 3 of my buddies, Jake, Marcus, and Tyler, had decided to drive down to Myrtle Beach for the week. It was about a 10-hour drive, so we left Columbus around 6 p.m., planning to drive through the night and get there by early morning. Everything was going great for the first few hours. We were taking turns driving, blasting music, joking around. I was having the time of my life. Then, around 1:30 a.m., somewhere in West Virginia, we stopped for gas. Tyler was driving at that point, and I really had to use the bathroom. Like, bad. I'd been holding it for probably an hour. We pulled into this Sunoco station that looked pretty sketchy. It was one of those old ones with the garage bays attached, and half the lights in the parking lot were out. There was one other car there, an old sedan parked by the air pump. Marcus said, "This place looks like where people get murdered," and laughed, but honestly, he wasn't wrong. I didn't care though. I had to piss so bad I could barely think straight. Tyler went in to prepay for gas while I headed straight for the restrooms on the side of the building. Jake and Marcus stayed by the car. The restroom was one of those exterior ones you access from outside the building, not through the store. There were 2 doors, one marked men and one marked women. The men's room door was propped open slightly, and I could see the light was on inside. I pushed it open. The door to one of the stalls was closed. I could see someone's feet underneath. Work boots, standing there, not sitting. That struck me as weird, but I really had to go. I went to the urinal and did my business as fast as possible. The whole time, those feet didn't move. The person didn't make any sound. No flushing, no rustling of clothes, nothing. Just standing there in the stall. I washed my hands quickly, glancing at the stall in the mirror. Still no movement. As I was about to leave, I heard a voice from the stall say, "You forgot something." It was deep, kind of muffled, like they were talking through fabric. I froze. "What?" I said. "You forgot something," they repeated. "Check the sink." I looked at the sink. There was nothing there except my wet handprints from washing my hands. "I don't see anything," I said. Then I heard the stall lock click open. I didn't wait. I pushed through the bathroom door and speed walked back to the car. My heart was pounding. Jake saw my face and asked if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, just some weirdo in the bathroom." Tyler came out of the store looking annoyed. "Pump's not working," he said. "We have to go inside and tell them which pump we're at before it'll turn on." I offered to do it, since I was already freaked out and wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I went inside. The clerk was this older woman, probably in her 60s, reading a magazine behind bulletproof glass. I told her we were on pump 3. She nodded and flipped a switch without looking up. As I turned to leave, she said, "You boys should get going. Don't use that bathroom again." I stopped. "What?" She looked at me for the first time. "The men's room. It's been broken for 3 days. We got a sign we're supposed to put up, but it keeps going missing. You should have used the women's room if you needed to go that bad." My stomach dropped. "But the light was on. Someone was in there." She frowned. "Nobody should be in there. Door's supposed to be locked." She pressed a button under the counter, and I heard this loud buzzer sound from somewhere in the back. "Jimmy!" she yelled. "Someone's in the men's room again." A guy came out from the back, I'm assuming Jimmy, carrying a tire iron. He was maybe 50, wearing a mechanic's uniform. "Again," he said. He looked at me. "You see anybody come out?" I shook my head. I told him someone was in the stall when I was in there, but I left before they came out. Jimmy and the clerk exchanged a look. Jimmy sighed and said, "All right, stay here to me," then walked outside toward the bathrooms. The clerk picked up a phone and started dialing. I should have gone back to the car right then, but I was freaked out and confused, and I wanted to know what was going on. So I stood there, watching through the window as Jimmy approached the men's room door. He yanked it fully open and stepped inside with the tire iron raised. Maybe 30 seconds later, he came back out, shaking his head. He walked back to the store and came inside. "Nobody in there," he said to the clerk. Then to me, You sure you saw someone? I described the work boots, the person standing in the stall, the voice telling me I forgot something. Jimmy's face went pale. That's the third time this month, he said to the clerk. We gotta call the police. The clerk was already on the phone with them. I heard her say, yes, the Sunoco on Route 60. We got another one. I asked what they meant by another one. Jimmy told me that for the past few weeks, people had been reporting someone hiding in that bathroom after hours. They'd called the police multiple times, but every time they checked, nobody was there. No fingerprints, no evidence anyone had been inside. But people kept seeing the same thing. Someone in the stall, wearing work boots, standing there waiting. One guy said the person tried to grab him when he walked past the stall, Jimmy said. We've been trying to keep it locked, but the lock keeps getting broken. I felt sick. I'd been alone in there with whatever that was. I went back to the car and told Jake, Marcus, and Tyler we needed to leave immediately. Tyler was still pumping gas. I told them what the clerk and Jimmy had said. Marcus laughed it off. He said they were messing with me. But Jake looked spooked. As Tyler finished pumping, I saw Jimmy walk back to the bathroom with the clerk following him. She was carrying something. I realized it was a padlock and chain. They were literally chaining the door shut. We got back on the road, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd narrowly avoided something really bad. I kept thinking about that voice saying, "You forgot something," and what would have happened if I'd stayed to find out what. About 2 hours later, Tyler got a text from a number he didn't recognize. All it said was, "You forgot your friend." We all checked. Jake, Marcus, Tyler, and me. We were all in the car. Tyler called the number back. It rang once. Then we heard a voice say, "Check the trunk," before the line went dead. Tyler pulled over. We were on an empty stretch of I-77, no other cars in sight. None of us wanted to check the trunk, but we couldn't keep driving without knowing. Jake finally volunteered. We all got out and stood back as he popped the trunk with the key fob. Nothing, just our bags and a cooler of drinks. We stood there in silence for a minute, then got back in the car and drove the rest of the way to Myrtle Beach without stopping. We didn't talk about it the whole week. Even now, 2 years later, none of them like bringing it up when we hang out. I reported it to the police when we got back to Ohio, gave them the station's location and the phone number that texted Tyler. They said they'd look into it, but I never heard back. I tried calling the Sunoco a few weeks later to see if anything else had happened, but the number was disconnected. I still have no idea who was in that bathroom or how they knew Tyler's number. I don't use gas station restrooms anymore, unless they're inside the actual store where there are cameras and other people around, and I definitely never go anywhere alone at night if I can help it. That night taught me that your gut is usually right. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I should have just held it until the next well-lit rest stop.